I'm Ingo, Niermann, and I would like to ask you if you are superstitious.
My name is Alexander Tarakhovsky. I go by Sasha. And I'm exceptionally superstitious.
But how can it be? You are a scientist. I'm Chus Martínez, and I'm absolutely shocked.
I am Julieta Aranda. I am not superstitious at all. I am an artist, but I know a lot about superstitions, and I just got a fly on my nose.
But you must be superstitious because you are Inca.
Yeah, but Mexicans, I mean, like, there are so many superstitions in Mexico, and my grandmother was so superstitious that I developed a healthy dose of skepticism and interest mixed.
Okay.
Well, that's why I have
a fly on my nose is pointing me
nose.
as the person that is
I
not
knew that the flies would be a problem. And
Yeah?
Yeah, I could sense it immediately.
But are you superstitious, Ingo?
No.
Not at all?
This is what I would like to find out. So I think I am the one who chose the topic from the
I
list.
think you are superstitious.
Yeah,
Because
so-
if you are denying it right in front, it means that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which of
It
course
means
I
something-
think
it's a
myself.
suspicion.
Yes, exactly, and this is why I would like to find out. So really, that would be nice for me if at the end I know about my superstitions.
Sasha, you.
So could
I
you
know.
tell about yours?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so historical. So the broken mirror as a sign of coming death, the bird flies like a pigeon into apartment. It's all about death. So somehow the whole range of superstitions.
A pigeon into the apartment?
Yeah. So
what?
But I've had so many pigeons.
yeah,
in my
the
apartment
pigeon
in
is
my life.
flying in an apartment is not a good sign.
I know.
The,
In Spain also not,
There's
because they shit on it.
No. I do think that I think that there's two parts of superstition, right? So one is sort of this anecdotal superstition, which connects a broken mirror or someone flying in an apartment, or the butterfly sitting on you is not a good
What?
thing.
The butterfly
What?
sitting
But
on
in
you?
Spain, a butterfly sitting on you is a good thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, depends on the butterfly and how does it sit. I mean,
But there's like a difference.
So how
It
does
depends
that
on the
sit?
butterfly. If it is a 3-kilo butterfly,
It's not a good sign.
it's
How
not
is
a
good?
good sign because it's sitting on your tummy after lunch.
Sasha, how is it? What is good and what is a bad
Well, I
sitting
mean,
butterfly?
Moths or
It sits on your butt? Bad.
No,
It
no.
sits on...
I mean, the most consistent ones is a black cat crossing in front of you.
Yes, that's the Spanish
that's a serious one.
Yeah, that's a global.
That's a global one.
Well, but that's why, for example, in my family, as soon as we could, we got a black cat because then you are because it cannot cross enough in
It's
front
like
of you.
it's like vaccination.
Uh-huh. My mother got one when we were small, so that done.
Right. But the question is why superstition sort of has such a persistence in
But it has to do with control, no?
humankind.
It's something about Deus ex machina. On the one hand, you say, well, it's not on me because everything would have worked out. Because most superstitions are about bad luck. There are rarely positive superstitions. And
Oh, but there is a couple.
There are.
There are
There are.
few- there are
Let's
few.
say
A four like a
Yeah,
treble, a
yeah.
treble of four
Yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
but that is,
How could
but most of
a
them
wishing
can live.
star.
Yeah.
As Sasha was saying, most of the superstitions are about death or bad luck, and I think that's something about finding excuses to say, yeah, you know, I would have gotten I would have won the lottery, but I couldn't. Or people that are trying to gain the lottery, to win the lottery, they try to accumulate these positive signs to see. if
Right,
they
but
can-
it
No,
has
there's
such a
many.
long history. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so there must be something that keeps it in a narrative.
Well, I would
Desire?
say. Well, in Spain, it
Control?
was obviously economy. I think the biggest bad luck, 7 years of bad luck, is broken a mirror, which was something
Yeah.
exceptionally expensive, and splitting the salt, something exceptionally expensive as well. So
Yeah.
many of the things behind it is economy. Plus, finding a treble of 4 leaves is super cheap. So this is good. But every time that it was about, a pigeon entering into an apartment, I think, but she did all the way, and it's difficult
Yeah,
to...
but that's a geographically restricted superstition, because depends where you live. I mean,
But pigeons are everywhere.
Yeah, pigeons
No,
are
but-
also... The black cat is also very Spanish, and it's very south Spain, like very south. Like,
But it exists as well in Germany. So where's the black cat coming from? That's not economy.
Black cat comes from rarity, I suppose, because there's lots of brown cats, and they are absolutely what we call street cats, or all the cats look alike at night, is the Spanish wisdom. So when something is exceptional, it may bring bad luck, because
No,
it's the exceptionality that
I think
marks
people
that...
just think it's scary. They're just scared by black.
But
By
they
the
are,
color
they are
black,
attached
no?
to witches. They supposedly that's like the pet of a witch. I mean, but I was thinking about the superstition, and something that has interested me before is how superstitions are tied to womanhood, because there are a lot of superstitions that deal with women that, like impure women that are having their period are not supposed to touch milk because the milk goes bad. They are not supposed to touch their husband. So it's a lot to do with uncleanliness and the subjection of the female body. So in witchcraft was something that women were doing, and there were so many superstitions attached to that. And that's the reason why I'm not superstitious.
The crows in Spain also, like ideas of the crow, certain birds, and it's the control of the peasants, like the subaltern colonial power. South America, the Spanish came with the Catholic faith, and in order to get away of the Catholic religion, superstition is also a mechanism of get out of some power, get in another. But also it's always about the Virgin, the black cat, the salt, and the mirror, so which are like symbols of religion and symbols of class. And also, like in Spain, for example, if you ask the upper classes if they are superstitious, they would say no. If you are the lower classes, they would say yes. But it is absolutely equal. Both are superstitious. But it's also a class system. But of course, it's even. Everyone is.
But I have.
What? Oh, sorry.
No, what I have thought in terms of that, just to finish that thought, is that, of course, when they tell you that that a woman that is having her period is going to spill, to make the milk go bad, or to contaminate something, or make the harvest go wrong, I always, instead of thinking of that as a mode of control, I have tried to think of that as a mode of power. Yeah, like I have the power to make the milk go bad, so it makes me feel more supernatural.
Yeah, you can do cheese in no time.
You know? Exactly. Yogurt.
I don't think it's entirely not true.
That women can make the milk go bad?
No. I think
That I am powerful?
no. I think
We're talking about a very famous scientist. So science could prove.
No,
that.
I think prove not, but there is a plausible mechanism how it may work. I mean, it's let's say the point is that there's again, it's a completely the sort of mystery of the sort of different physiological functions have to be separated from the reality. So the whole notion of the sort of bleeding is such that when anyone bleeds,
and they don't die?
Not necessarily, not about this. So the blood is a fantastic breeding ground for many different bacteria, especially even if it's physiological bleeding, it is still the problem, bacteria. And actually it was up to very recent time, it was an issue because bleeding not controlled properly may lead to massive systemic infection, and many people actually succumb to this infection being not taken care of properly.
So you mean that the thinking that bleeding may cause a coagulation of milk, it has to do with the amount of bacteria that is sensed historically?
No, I mean, yeah, so if...
An intuition of a bacteriological presence.
Exactly right. So it's a naive Pasteur sort of
Naive Pasteur is good.
Yeah,
I
so
love it.
prehistorical Pasteur, it's that the blood meal for the bacteria actually thrive on the hemoglobin, and it's extremely well-known phenomena. And the point is that one can easily imagine that abundance of blood and may create a fertile ground for different bacteria. Bacteria will be more abundant and then get on hands, get around, and then may cause sort of problem with milk in particular.
But probably, as you are saying, probably in times where hygienic measures were not at work, it may happen that if you were a farmer and 3-4 women were bleeding, then something went wrong. So it must be based on some...
Right, because they were handling things such that the chances of getting more bacteria around, so to speak, was higher, and they will get into milk, and it's sort of
corrupted, or make it not corrupted, but make it into
corrupted.
Yeah.
So this is not totally unfounded.
No, it's completely. My father was slaughter, yeah. So, and I know this kind of getting rid of the blood, like immediately.
Halal
During slaughtering, how often they would clean everything. They would just clean. Their clothes, everything, constantly. It's constantly, and it's not because they don't like the blood or anything. I mean, the blood
if you
smells
just
super
keep on
fine.
Talking about blood,
It just smells
my
like
blood
from
pressure
iron.
is I'm gonna.
I know, but you need to detach from this.
I cannot detach myself.
No, but it's also interesting that that brings us to a question why the blue blood has been introduced.
The blue blood, you mean for the royalties?
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing because it's also maybe connected to the question of non-contaminated versus contaminated.
But maybe that's like something to do because the animals that have blue blood are these horseshoe crabs, and they have this. This is a blood that gets it's copper based, not iron based. So it has it coagulates instantly, and it's used. We use it a lot. We kind of like milk the crabs to make vaccines. So there are like a couple of vaccines that are made through the blue blood of the horseshoe crabs.
Yeah, but I don't think aristocracy was aware of horseshoe crab. But
maybe the royal horseshoe crabs. I don't know. I'm just like thinking about the blue blood that I know of.
Yeah, but where does the blue come from?
That's a question. But I'm sure that the blood concerns and all of this. Yeah. Okay, we can stop.
But it was. It was very obvious that the blood was not blue. So
no. No, I mean, and
it's a metaphorical. I mean, it also has to do with the pigments because red is a very common and easily obtained pigment, and blue was incredibly hard to manufacture as a color in ancient times. So it was a color associated with both divinity and royalty. That's why the Virgin Mary is clothed in blue, because people had to make this crazy pilgrimage to get indigo, either indigo or not turquoise, but some lapis lazuli, which is how they made the pigment, and that's why the rarity of the color made it
possible. Well, I mean, it's an interesting question, of course, where it comes from. But I'm totally sympathetic with the superstition about different blood products, whatever they are.
But
I think the question if this is sorry.
How does it affect you? Meaning, you said I'm superstitious, but meaning, would you control the space you are in, or check that there is no pigeons or no
pigeons? Well, pigeons
are carriers of disease, no?
Yeah. Well, and not. I don't think it's about disease. I think they're worried about. There are diseases. There's a very famous virus called West Nile virus, which is carried by crows, and it's always a fear, even by now, when someone finds a dead crow or two.
Yeah, that's very Spanish.
Yeah.
The fear of the crows is very Spanish.
So this is a very viral thing. The pigeons are carriers of other virus, terrible disease.
The poo. No?
Yeah, pigeon poo is a horror, and one can die from this, like, from absolutely terrible pneumonia very quickly. So it's not unusual. And I think bird flu, So I don't totally exclude that some of the superstitions are linked to
Are based to common knowledge, or
true
like,
that.
let's
But
say,
let's
And the
focus-
birds were most likely the only carriers of diseases that would go beyond the local communities and sort of.
Well, nowadays also airplanes, no? But I guess
Yeah.
before this kind
Sure,
of like
sure.
human mobility, birds were.
But
the
I do
bigger-
agree with Chus about economic thing. The breaking mirror is like a big deal because you cannot really get a new one.
yeah, but it was one of the most expensive
Yeah.
things. If one studies the history of the mirror, to get a mirror, it's still an expensive object today. so-
But I think what is with superstitions, they have this idea of it's infectious. The point is not just that it's a big loss, that the mirror is broken, but it's kind of once you have, and this is very this idea, you have bad luck. The whole idea of bad luck. You have one incident, and it might be a minor one, and this will then,
Yeah.
chain of events kind of thing.
Right.
yeah.
Well, but I think it's right because we also think about bad luck in statistically, sort of in a statistic fashion.
But like people that are in two plane crashes, because there have been people that are in two plane crashes.
Really?
Well, but if you think about families that live in a big house, like in Spain, right? So they were.
We used to, not
Yeah.
anymore.
No, I know, but at time when superstition were common. So usually, at what time of infectious diseases and other things, and not necessarily modern type of medical help. So statistically speaking, someone was dying all the time in a big families.
Yes.
So one could easily connect the event like broken mirror to
With-
someone else's death, and that would sort of
Explain things.
Explain
Or
things.
allow the
Yeah.
people to carry
And I
out.
think, yes, and this anticipation of death was actually very helpful because since everyone was dying with some frequency in the household, it would certainly prepare you mentally for the imminent loss. And it's not a bad thing.
Then something that I'm thinking about is that, of course, there is somebody that has like a lot of bad luck, and you could say that person is cursed. And you have this these things that are made to ward, to protect you from the evil eye and things like that, like the Turkish eye, like this blue thing with the eye. And I'm thinking now not only about like being cursed, but the possibility of cursing somebody, like the power of curses in relation to.
But that's a different topic.
No,
Superstition
it's quite,
and curses.
it's quite together because in order for a curse to function, you have to believe. In order for many superstitions to function, you have to believe. They go together.
It's a great topic. It's like placebo. Absolutely, I 100% agree with you.
In a way, yeah,
Placebo, superstition is like placebo.
Superstition works exactly the same as placebo because it hits you exactly with the strongest sort of spark of belief in certain thing, and that is more or less what happened with placebo, because the moment you believe in the action,
You are motivated.
you're motivated, and this action actually take place, and we all know that placebo works. So superstition is not that different in this respect.
No, but for me, the power of one of my biggest problems is to distinguish in between superstition and neurosis, because sometimes now superstition, before there was like a symbolic thinking, or a people that see signs all over, or they see a sign of this and
Like
that
magical
is
thinking?
completely.
Magical thinking, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but superstition is kind of also oriented, because one thing is to have one or two superstitions, but I know people that they have 300 at work. So then if you have 300, then it completely codifies, it's as if you are seeing the world through a code. And then it also makes you neurotic, because you need to avoid all the time, implement, avoid. Need to certain objects like numbers of cups that need to be on the table, because certain numbers bring bad luck, certain numbers is good luck. Position of people, we're not talking about one or two superstitions, but
But you have
the
to see
filter.
how many elevators and buildings don't have a 13th floor.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, but I think you're right. It's sort of collective. Well, it is a great thought, because maybe this is well, it's kind of an obsessive compulsive.
Yeah, disorder.
Disorder.
Avant la lettre. When
Yeah.
people could not name it, it completely produces codifying systems to organize your kitchen, to put your clothes in a certain area, to like everything. Meaning, if you go to, and I know a couple of people that their house is totally like the Marie Kondo of superstition. It's like, it's brutal.
And yeah, this is we now touch this huge topic of numbers, yeah. And where does this superstition with numbers come from, and why is it so strong? Because this we cannot relate
Judaism.
to.
That's
Yeah.
Spain is a former Jewish country, and that's why people like my mother intuitively married in the 13 and try all the time to go homeopathically towards. So she married the 13th of May. Very important for her that it was the 13th.
Yeah,
Because-
attachment to numbers is very important.
She needs to. My mother is the living example of what Julieta is saying. Is a woman that wants to control the potential problem of somebody controlling her. So she married the 13th so that nobody could blame her for bad luck or not having a lasting marriage or whatever. So she just did it. Then whatever happened, it's just in her control.
Right.
She can always, if she divorced, she would say it's because I married on the 13th, I was not believing in my marriage. And if it lasts, it's because superstition has no power and I am more powerful than that and my marriage is lasting. So
Right.
it's both.
I think it also reflects the fact that all of us are controlled by different type of rhythms, like circadian rhythm, like the other rhythms. There's sort of different type of clocks that run.
You mean biology?
Biological clocks, and we, of course, we are not too much into thinking about the mechanics of these clocks, but we are controlled by the clocks. So this is sort of could be a formalized reflection of the fact that we are run by a certain clock, and also inner perception of clock which you feel comfortable with. So there are certain,
It's an aversion to prime numbers, no?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most important thing about it.
An
The
aversion to
prime
prime.
to
numbers.
prime numbers.
Why? Why would you? Why are
Yeah,
prime
13,
numbers
yeah,
problematic?
13, 7. The 11, not because it's so nice, because it's 2, 1.
Symmetrical.
So it's so symmetrical as a number, so it does not count. But the 7, the 13 right next to the 12. The 12 had such an importance, so the 13 was, for me, that's the only explanation why, you cannot
You mean
divide it, you
odd?
cannot divide it. There is a lot of quarrel. It's the same with 3. You have always, you see trouble. You cannot divide it.
But these are also numbers that you use in kind of like religious sense, no? Like the Holy Trinity and what do you say, like the 7 sins, and that, the commandments are 12, so that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But there's like a lot of...
Yes.
No, but it's a lot of numbering in up to a certain level, of course. So so it stops.
A cat has 7 lives.
Yeah.
So everything has to do with the 7 because the 7 is more powerful than the 6. The 6 can be divided. You are right. It's a political thinking at the end of the day, like like anything related to
7. How many circles does hell has? 7 or 9?
7. Yeah.
It's about 5 at least. It's half of 10. It's at least.
And
then
it's
we
your
have the
hand.
and the 5 exactly. We have the 5 here.
But everything that has a power needs to go beyond.
But the 7 is beyond
symmetry.
is beyond any system in the 13 as well.
But 13 is a very strong element of superstition.
Yeah, but I was very surprised when I was living in the United States that 13 was so powerful in superstitions that everything was around the...
No buildings have a 13th floor.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have never lived in a country where a number is so barn and also so a topic for the movies, for Friday 13 and this and that. But I was completely unaware that the Americans would be so possessed by that. No?
So why it's Friday the 13th? Not
This is one
Thursday or
of one of the
Wednesday.
superstitions that completely escapes me because
That was adopted by horror movies.
yeah, I don't
But
know.
I have
Yeah,
not.
but the horror movies after sensitivity, because Friday the 13th in America, many people don't ever would
Don't even leave
touch
their
a
But
plane or leave a
Americans are
house.
obsessed with numbers anyway because you know the Americans also the entire sex life is connected to numbers.
How come? How so?
Explain. That's interesting.
With the first date is date 3 is a date. If you go on the third date, it means that you have to have sex.
On the third.
On the
third date, yeah.
On the third date. If you don't, then it's over.
Oh.
Second date is never kiss on the first date, something like this.
And what happened in the fourth?
There's no first date. Then
You're a
it's
couple.
then they're kind of couple.
No, but there's people who are dating like endlessly.
Yeah, but it's not dating and dates are different. Dating is a continuum which can go forever, but the third date is a critical date.
And you're
And
not
if
on date,
nothing
you're not
happened
on
on the third date, then you're doomed. Well, not doomed. Then it's
But
over.
what happened if you do have sex? You are automatically a couple.
If you, no.
You're dating.
But if you don't have, put it this way, if you do not have sex on the third date,
You're doomed.
then it's it.
But that would be completely superstitious. Meaning, if I am on the third date, I would think that somebody is always eating my third date. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
I
could
know,
be
I know.
in front of complete
No,
third
I
date
think-
predators, people
Right.
that are like
I was-
predating my third date.
Yeah,
and then-
I was totally mesmerized by this because when I moved to the States and I watch a lot, this sort of, I was very fortunate to have an assistant who was totally consumed by this type of culture.
And how can you?
And
how
she
can you-
explained it me in great depth.
I would be super superstitious if
I know.
the third date symbolizes sex, because what if the bastard doesn't call you the next morning because he could be just a predator of the third date?
Yeah, but
Like
There are
making
many.
you
Of
believe
cour-
that everything is going
Yeah.
fine.
No, but
Or
this
you're
is there's
just
a way.
going for
It's,
three free meals and
it's a,
Exacto. It's like 3 meals. For me, it would be like completely like these guys that
I
are
mean,
Two,
collecting.
because then you don't go for the third.
right,
you
but
go
that's
for two
but you're
premiums.
hitting exactly on the way.
I would be so superstitious.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's exactly the whole web of fear, which
I
is
never
which
What's
dated.
that?
which, web of fear because the whole love life at the beginning is coded in such a precise way that things must happen on the first date, should never happen on the first date, second
base, third base, yeah.
and this is and the entire behavior pattern is absolutely structured in the most rigorous way, and if you don't follow the protocol, that's it. It's like not dating. It's like courting in the animal world because there are rules, and it's repeated absolutely perfectly.
Because you would be like a complete, you would be like a donut in front of the door of the police station. Like, a complete.
No, it's like a phase on. It's like phase on behavior or whatever, whoever animal behavior is, because it's so 100% controlled by, let's say, superstition or predictable pattern.
But
of
how
behavior.
can you control that the guy is gonna call you on the
You-
day after? You
you
cannot.
don't.
So it could be that's
Fear.
just start where it stops.
Yes, but you can control it. But every time is a bottleneck of concerns, and that's where a lot of superstition also happen because depending on behavior, depending on things, you make certain predictions.
Yeah, but I think that this is for me the new superstition because, for example, I've been always complaining at the way that, for example, women coach other women in certain problematic patterns in gender, and they create new superstitions. Like, for example, when the telephone allow us to SMS, and then, for example,
Don't answer immediately.
but imagine that you do, and then he doesn't, and then your best friend, quote unquote, is your best enemy, tells you like, no, he has definitely interest. It's only that he is taking his time, but this is a sign of interest, and he's not replying. This kind of what women tell each other when something is going wrong.
Right,
and
but
then
this is-
they are reading it right, which is so funny.
But it's a pretext for generating, as you say, new superstition or new
New
whole-
pattern reading.
New pattern, yeah. And that's what is interesting, because the new media must have
Oh,
generated
he asked
their
me
own.
to go for breakfast. Oh, he totally is sensitive and really wants the relationship to continue. It means he has no interest having a dinner so that there is no danger of landing with you in bed.
No, I mean, the love life in the States is completely Pavlovian.
It's completely?
Pavlovian is technically linked to gastric secretion. I mean, it's the most remarkable nonsense, because the fact that everything, there's not a discussion that you go together to movie, to the theater, to jazz, something like this. It's always dinner. It's a third date dinner. Third date dinner, that's a formula.
I would be very superstitious.
I
That would
know.
make me completely superstitious about the restaurant that you choose.
Yeah.
Because then it's the third date, and then you go to a restaurant and everything goes wrong, or the food. So it would make you a completely like a curator of the
Absolutely,
stars,
yeah.
like a cosmological reader of what makes it.
Yeah, the wrong table, the wrong.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
wrong choice.
The
that
wrong
guy-
choice.
and it's just that the guy didn't have interest from the beginning.
Yeah. That's.
And when can you marry? I think when is a sign that the ring is coming?
I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of things, but that's too far
From the third
from
date.
the third.
Not on the third date.
No,
Do
no,
not marry on the third date.
But I'm totally curious because I think that today, as never before for me, people are possessed by patterns and
Yeah.
what they signify, because the poverty of labor, the conditions of society and everything, they are so miserable that you are completely controlled like a puppet by, as Julieta was saying, the possibility of reprogramming the misery in another direction, and then you would be lucky. And
But you know, there is something that I see now happening in the online world. Yeah, like you see a lot of things. 5 ways in which you have been doing this wrong. You know, you have always been eaten watermelon wrong. You are folding your clothes wrong. You have been peeling the mango wrong. And there is so much insistence that you have been doing everything from wiping your ass to eating watermelon. You have been doing it wrong. Let me show you a hack. You know, like that's crazy.
Yeah, but it's sort of interesting. I mean, because it's the effort to introduce certain standard has some meaning, because diversity will be always the privilege of rich, and by patterning poor,
yeah, totally,
you
are
make
completely right.
you make the whole system much more controllable,
And I think
and then directable,
homogeneous as well.
homogeneous, and that's why all the sort of influencers are so interesting, because people still cannot really appreciate fully to what extent they're imitating the life of bacteria in a very deep sense of it. Because
The influencers are imitating the life of bacteria.
of course, the whole gene program in every living organism is controlled by influencers. So the influencers in the individual cell are proteins that would bind to your DNA and make it work or make it not work. Okay, so these are influencers. So the famous person who learn how, figure out how to make stem cells from any other cell, this fellow from Japan whose name is Yamanaka, he found 4 proteins, you can call them influencers, that if you stuck them into a particular cell, they can change it from being completely boring, like part of the skin, into glorious stem cells, which can give rise to anything else.
Oh, okay.
So these are
Like
4
product
influencers.
placement.
Huh?
Influencers and product placement
Yeah.
at the cellular level.
Yeah, so
Well, but this
influencer.
is the biggest dream of metamorphosis,
Yeah.
that everyone is the ave phoenix, like
Yeah.
that every person without means and possibilities is dreaming of a complete reprogramming
Yeah.
from my poverty and misery into an exciting life.
Right, or you become.
But I don't have to work.
Yeah, or you develop influencers that can also be seen as instruments that subconsciously, of course, imitate the behavior of these proteins in the cell because they program the society in a particular behavior pattern. So what you deal with what is called in organism differentiation means, or specific specialization, when a particular cell becomes a.
But that makes me really think that it's a genius thinking, because we could develop like digital superstitions.
Absolutely.
In order to prevent, the influences, maybe the pigeons of the future. Like
Right. So if you
if you see an influencer in your Instagram, it's a sign
Absolutely.
of bad luck.
Well, I mean, influences. I think the influence. That's exactly coming.
If you become an influencer against your will,
So
then
right. So the messiahs, in
a big
the
influencer?
big influencers, and messiah of different types, from big to one to smaller one. Not talking about specific personalities because I don't think it is a necessarily best place to discuss them. But every time you deal with the phenomenon of influencer, that is one-to-one what happened in any living organism.
But
So-
we need to develop, I think that what you are saying is that the wisdom of the past is to create filters for these kind of processes to go ahead. So actually we need digital superstition.
Yeah, well, that's what influencers.
I'm sure there are some,
If you are 7 hours online,
Yeah, no.
Like-
Okay, system theory would call it reduction of complexity. Yeah, it's all what society is about. It's about how to reduce the chaos, how to find, yes, exactly, some order where actually there is no order. So how to get some, a complex society to end up.
if you have
with-
only
with
3
some-
followers, it's bad.
No, where actually everything could be, could not.
Well, I mean,
this
they-
is what a lot of people think.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of. Well, chaos is not a bad thing. I mean,
And
that's.
think of the magic numbers with followers, 666, and
I know. Ingo had an ex-girlfriend that is preventing, like, is only following 666. So, like, this kind of digital superstition.
There are a lot of numbering that describes different form of sex. That's we don't go there. I mean, that's but it's.
But that's 69.
I didn't say this. You said it.
You said it.
what, you're superstitious or what?
No,
Saying
no.
it.
But it's.
But that's not numerology, that's symbology, because
Yeah,
the number
of course.
resembles
Yeah.
the position.
Right. But it's. I think. We are talking about the same thing actually for second day in a row. That there's a behavior of
You mean that climate change is a superstition?
No. Because we're talking about, we start to perhaps appreciate, because of abundance of different type of networks, the fact that they must be governed by specific rules, or certain rules. And the rules not implemented by an individual, but the rules how networks are governed normally.
But I think that one of the problems with superstition for me is that it's very bound to neurotic compulsive disorder. So it's very easy to give in. Certain types of mind, it's easy. Even myself, if I start being surrounded by people which are a little neurotic, I completely affected by that. So I need to spend time fighting it. So because otherwise you just end up putting glasses in a certain way, pouring liquids in a
Sure.
certain way, doing so.
very time consuming.
Yeah, but choose. But think
Totally.
about, well, don't be so negative about consuming time. So there are certain things in biology that call anticipated response, and where living organisms respond in a directed way, but also in a completely seemingly random way, like they're anticipating something. And the point is that it seems like a waste of energy, but it's not.
For example?
Well, I mean, bacteria or yeast or moss can start making genes that would appear completely unnecessary because they will make genes sort of preparing them for the hardship where they're still living in a comfortable, cushy, rich environment. And one can think it's nonsense. But the point is that giving the likelihood of a hardship, those that make the genes in anticipations, or make the genes work in anticipation, will manage to survive.
But that's like the fable, no?
Yeah. So this is not.
So your idea is that superstitions are kind of, it's a constant, it's a test alert.
Well, but Chus, you're right.
Like,
so Chus put
it's like false alarms, but they help you to
be prepared. Be prepared, and this seems like a waste of time. And Chus is right because it's neurosis, but that's why frequently neurotic people are sort of surprisingly much more prepared for different sort of environmental
That
changes.
has to do, for example, like La cigarra y la hormiga, like this very famous fable of the ant and the lazy cigarra, however you call the animal. And that has a lot to do with the perception.
The dragonfly.
Not a dragonfly, something
The one
else.
that does this crick, 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 crick.
Oh, okay.
Like a cricket kind of thing.
Well,
But so that has a lot to do with the perception of Latin and South American people and being lazy, which has to do with people that live close to the equator, that never have the change of season. There's harvest year round, so they don't need to store grain for the winter because there is no winter. So as opposed, or prepare for the cold because there is no cold. So they live in a much more relaxed state. And this is very an American thing, because when the Northern Europeans got to the American continent, they are like, but what's with these people? They're like so damn lazy. But they did not have the conditions where they needed to prepare for they had to prepare for the rain season, but not for the cold and not for the, not say, okay, there will not be any food from September to March. That was not the case. So that kind of neurosis is very, related to.
but it's understandable, right? Because it must be embedded into culture of fabric. If you must live constantly in anticipation of, if the frequency of potential of disasters or calamities or disturbances is relatively high, being prepared in advance is not a bad thing.
No, but what I'm saying is that I'm not criticizing that, but what is peculiar to me is to think that then Northern Europeans automatically say, well, that thing that is not like me is lazy, it's bad, it's unprepared.
Right, but that's sort of...
So that's the thing that interests me there.
Yeah, but it's by now, it's all becoming more interesting, I guess, because all will become... It's easier to see from above because all people become more visible, they display their fears, superstitions more openly. You can read about them if you're interested.
But for example, when I was living in Scandinavia for a while, and also in Germany, people were very keen on denying to me any type of superstition, like Ingo. And then there's certain patterns that are just certain stubbornness that repeats and repeats, that it could be super easily identified as superstition. But for example, in Scandinavia, they were like all the time denying it. And then like they were endorsing it to exactly that, like ancient South symbolic ways of thinking that they completely left behind, no? And then you see how the pattern in the society is so heavy. Like all Scandinavian people, for me, they seem programmed by an app. I think they look completely an app product. So I thought, but this is like superstition, I think.
But right, but you are referring, I think, to the fact that the pattern of change, of the frequency of change, must predefine it to a great extent, because the rhythm let's say in the north, is very different
But
compared
what I
to...
mean is that in very traditional societies, you are so aware of being possessed by tradition that breaking the pattern by accident or
Sure.
the event
You-
or yourself makes you aware, because you are, that you are living in that. In societies that are ultra traditional, like the Scandinavian, and absolutely unaware that they are repeating the tradition, for them it's even that freedom is denied, because they think
Yeah.
that all of them fucking putting candles in the ash of a teapot is, it's just a normal thing to do.
They touch, no? Superstition and tradition, they have a blurry
Yeah, but they
border.
all have the same kind of fucking thing to put the X, which is yellow, and then it coincides with their flag, and it is blue, and it coincides with the flag, and it's red, and it coincides with the flag. So it's very funny, no? That the X in the morning go by the flag, and it's just like, because everyone in Sweden is just wearing fucking yellow. As you are wearing the flag. Why are you wearing the flag? And in Denmark, they are all in red and everything. So, and then they say, but this is a superstition because you don't need to wear the flag in order to be identified by the tribe. I think you could just be free
But
of that.
they want to identify, and this is an interesting thing with superstitions as well.
Yesterday
I
cheese with this thing. You could use a knife. I remember once that they said, pass me a knife. And they said, no. Here we do slices. We slice the cheese with that thing. I said, no, I want to use a knife. And they all said, no, you cannot use a knife. And then I said, are you superstitious? And they said, no, but we do it like that. But that's exactly what
This
superstition
is always
is.
things coming from the past. It's like in Germany, you're not supposed to cut potato with a knife. Yeah.
Why?
It brings bad luck.
It's it's from at times, I don't know. It's when you would cut it with It is when you would have cut it with a rusty knife or something. Then
It makes you whatever. It's
whatever.
a superstition.
But it's completely like when you have a normal cutlery, the knife will do nothing.
It
to
makes
the
you hate the
potato.
Jews.
And you also touch it with your potato, with your fork. I mean, the fork also, when you squeeze it,
Yeah.
it's the same. If you take one, but look at
Not to
Germans,
eat
you will
directly
never
from
see
the
them.
pan.
You will never see them. No one, and you're so trained in not cutting a potato on the plate. You can cut it. Of course, there is potato salad. It's cut by knife, but not on the plate.
It's a superstition.
Yeah. So there's lots of
Considering
things.
that
but there is
potatoes
an-
belong to me, American continent, and we don't have superstitions about potatoes.
This is really bad.
It's
Because you are the origin of the producer. It's only the consumer. That's another good thing about superstition. Superstition talks a lot about who consumes and who produces. Because of course, if you are the producer of salt, you have less superstitions than if you are the consumer of salt,
Yeah.
or those that has much less salt. So it talks about trading.
yeah.
But coming to this, I sort of oversimplify it, of course.
He's
but,
stupid. Don't
but,
allow him to serve the.
But I do think that superstition is deeply rooted into this sort of biology thing.
You think it's a biological
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, it's a biological.
Let's see.
But do you mean then that all Scandinavian people are biologically
Crazy.
No, I think it's.
Damn. Okay, mystery.
Just now, you. No?
I'm trying to, like, we need to explain to the
No,
person.
we will be burned.
This is
we will be
about-
burned.
Yeah, but I think I am inclined to believe you completely. I think that it is like a symbolical acknowledgement that the intuitions trespass the DNA.
Absolutely, it's absolutely correct because the nature constantly takes bets. It's even the term called bet hedging, and means that if you are exposed to hardship, you start to do things kind of random, and the chances, not you, but the simple organism, and by doing this, they increase the likelihood of, let's say, events that would be useful for their health, and and there are different ways of buying time to do this. So the idea of time wasting or energy wasting is not completely wrong in this respect. So you
I like wasting time.
yeah, but this is again different. The way we waste time and the way how bacteria or yeast wasting time is very different.
Are you calling me a bacteria?
Yeah, no, not you. But our collective behavior cannot be that different at the end, because we are subject for the same principle at some point.
But it's also, totally. I'm totally inclined to believe that this has been also because the most, let's say, the most superstitious parts of Earth are very exposed to the elements.
Right.
Are normally cultures that are very hit by the historical event.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, you develop historically ways of filtering information.
Yeah.
Information that comes from inside, information that comes from culture. Yeah. And that, the problem is that these traditions don't get revisited. I think my problem is that to create the new superstitions that would allow you.
Why don't we make
the Tinder superstition?
No, but why don't we decide to create a new superstition before we exit this bunker, and let's see if we can be influencers of superstition and see if we can come
I
up
already
with
said it. If you have an influencer in your life, it's bad luck.
I mean, because there are superstitions that drive me crazy. There is one in particular, which is this thing of having to look people in the eyes when you drink.
Oh yeah, I hate
and
it. But who invented that? This is not from us.
It drives me crazy because people overcompensate. So you are drinking. I mean, like now we are listening, so you don't know what the face that I'm making. But people, they toss with you and they go like that.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And people look so horrible when they do that.
That's bad luck.
If somebody, if I am on a date with somebody, and that person goes like that, I'm not sleeping with
It's
you.
Gone. Absolutely,
That's that.
No, but yeah.
But it's neat.
Yeah, but this
because
is just like certain
But don't
kind
you
of
think
behavior.
that this came after attention deficit disorder broke?
But it's something that if you don't do that,
no.
something bad happens to you. I don't remember what.
No, absolutely.
Bad luck,
Because
yeah.
in Spain, for example, you were drinking. And then you don't, first of all, you don't cheers and so on, because it's too dangerous. You may break the cups, the cost, so you don't do that thing. It's like for films. You just drink and you just perhaps would say salute, but you would not like ching, ching. That's kind of post-Hollywood. Okay, we give up that maybe in the 80s where people got a little bit more money, started buying these things. IKEA broke, everyone could buy more glasses, so it doesn't matter. Then the second thing is that after attention deficit disorder, people start doing that and on top pretending that the tradition is to look in your eyes. And this is amazing. I am with Julieta. Where does that come from? That's a new superstition.
No.
And then you hate automatically. That's the good thing about superstitions. Superstitions, and I absolutely agree with Sasha, is the most effective programmer ever. In a second, you can hate the whole table and decide you are never going to have dinner with them again.
I mean, but it's also, that superstition is a very good regulator of reproduction, because somebody that does that, I'm not going to bed with, so that's automatically.
It's like smell. It's exactly like smell. It's the wrong smell.
There are no babies coming out from that.
You don't want that to replicate.
No, but it's also, I think it's a reflection for me more of personal insecurity. Because if you can look in the eye, it sort of reaffirms your ability to trust this person. I think there are certain groups in general that have amazing...
but since Anglo-Saxons go by pattern, they replicate the pattern
without
embodying the choreography.
But the whole notion of trust and is a big deal, especially when I moved to Germany. There was a whole mythology about how it is important to trust, to be to have a reliable neighbor.
It's true, because the Germans cheat like hell.
So think of the handshake. The handshake is really interesting. So the handshake is, so there's one idea when a man cannot do like a strong handshake, it's a wimp. So do a strong handshake.
Absolutely.
Strong handshake. And there's all these like even studies, like scientific studies about the weaker your handshake, the more likely you are like ill or something, you will die soon. Your life expectancy is related yeah, it's completely
It's
the
true,
stronger
it's
the
true.
But that's
handshake.
for men only or also for women?
For men, they talk. It's usually
No, but right, but it's a handshake is a big deal because
and some
No, but look
men,
at Donald Trump.
some
I mean,
men
like,
do
he
really,
does
yeah. Of course, Donald
wave.
Trump, and you see all the intelligence and the art of Donald Trump is really his handshake. I must say, this is what really where I get all my respect for him that I have is in the way he does his handshake. It ends right afterwards, but the handshake is remarkable.
right, but it's again.
This is really, really, really remarkable. So, but there's as well then the people who do an extra soft one to kind of, undermine the whole thing. So they would just give you your hand like this, and so as
like
well
a dead fish
to
handshake.
create
that's
ambiguity and
Yeah, but I think, again, I'm very sort of biased, of course, but it all goes back to to interaction between, at a very sort of cellular level, because your neurons interact, or cells interact with other cells by virtue of mechanical or chemical handshake. So the whole idea of connectivity and how strong it is.
No, to me,
Is a big deal. So handshake is just.
But the eyes, if somebody looks directly into the eyes, making an effort to open the eyes at the same time,
Yeah.
They
it
look
means
like dumb
distrust.
fish.
It's
Because
trust.
trust should be
It's a chemical cue.
natural,
Yeah.
not forced.
should be absolutely how you call it, spontaneous.
Right.
So if you break the rule of spontaneity in doing that, it means that you have been thinking about cheating. Otherwise,
Right.
why you open your eyes now?
To me, that thing is like I like looking at people in the eyes, but I don't like them to look like frogs that just woke up.
Yeah.
And that
No, but that's-
thing, that's like I don't want to see you
Yeah,
doing
but
that
that-
because I feel embarrassed for you. Yeah.
That's this is everyone. You just have to embrace diversity, and that's it. And
But it's not diverse because when rules, that's
Hey, they all
the
look
production
like
of
frogs
rules.
that just woke up.
yeah, I know, but it's sort of the same thing. There's a whole thing, in my family because that we are talking constantly about our Jewish neurosis, and this is absolutely true. I mean that we have another pattern, which is a lack of pattern, and
Unpredictability. You are
yeah.
unpredictable.
this is where the neurosis come from.
I think so. But it's on the other hand, I totally understand it because it keeps you mentally and physically alert.
So what is the relationship between neurosis and superstition?
I think Chus nailed it down from the very beginning because she said that superstition is, well, you can call it like this. Superstition is a part of the behavior which is kind of generally can be summarized as anticipating behavior.
Yeah.
And neurosis is our definition of this anticipating behavior in its extreme form, right? So because, it's very obvious. So Larry David is a great example of this.
Perfect.
Behavior filled with whatever you wish, from neurosis, superstition, but that's.
Yeah, it shows us as well as a kind of identity. It's completely his. And this is yesterday. I spoke with some people working for TVA, and they said, "Yeah, but I mean, my superstitions are my identity," and it comes with an idea that certain superstitions are more regional than they actually are. So there was a guy from South Italy, and he was saying he gave the example with the salt, and for him it was a South Italian superstition. I said no, it exists in Germany, and he was completely upset if I would have stolen him his identity. Yeah, it's a bit like with nationalism, where everyone has their nationalistic things, and actually in every country they are the same. Yeah.
Yeah, in Spain, for example, the biggest superstition on decision making is that, on a Tuesday, never made any decision.
Right.
So Tuesday is you cannot marry or go into boarding or marrying. That's what they say. So You know, I think this is also very interesting.
En martes ni te casas ni te embarcas.
Nittenberger.
Yeah, but that's kind of, don't you think it's understandable because it comes after the weekend?
It comes after a very difficult period that you may overcome because you
Yeah.
could be having a passionate weekend.
Yeah.
So the decision of waiting for a day,
Yeah.
which would be Monday,
Yeah.
may bring you into the ruin on Tuesday. So
Right.
of course you should prevent that in a full body of people that historically, if you could not have, for example, sex a lot or interaction in between genders, the possibility of passionately falling in love in a couple of days fast is the high. Mixing up your genetic code in a bad manner.
I think so. Well, at the end, it will all, everything we are talking about will eventually somehow is going to boil down to genetic code build-up of
So
some.
it's our bacteria telling us don't.
Yeah.
Ingo, did you discover any superstition yet? And you? What do you do with the potatoes? Did you cut potatoes on a plate?
Yeah. But this took a while, I must admit. But it was more, but I wouldn't say it was a superstition. I was not assuming that it's something bad, but it's just a pattern. Of course, I have lots of patterns that I follow. But
Not
that's
eating-
something different from superstition. It's just learned behavior.
Eating from
but
a
it does
pan
not go
brings
with
bad
the-
luck. Comer
Leaving
de la
your
sartén.
hat,
Eating from a
leaving
pan
your bag in
brings
the
bad
floor
luck.
makes the money fall out of the. You don't become rich if you leave your bag on the floor, something like
No,
that.
you don't become rich if you leave your bag on the floor. That's what they say, but only Latin America and Spain it does not apply.
Then there is something about the hat in the bed.
in
Hat
Germany,
in
it's-
the bed?
You
But
should
it means
always.
what to do with the one night standings. I think that goes
I
back
don't
to
know.
the third date.
Okay.
Like the hat in the.
But
in
who
the-
uses hats these days?
Probably cowboys or before, like that is kind of a hat in the bed means that the guy that owns the cows that you probably were wishing to marry left the
cow
hat
guy.
but left himself. The money is escaped your house.
But confront me with a superstition.
What the?
Yeah, you could confront me with one of my superstitions.
You have plenty
Yeah.
that you need to write in the bed.
That I need to write, and
Yeah,
that is not
you
a
need to
superstition.
write on the bed. Yes, because
I don't. It's not
no,
necessary.
no. You need to write on the bed. You you don't shower. That's a superstition.
Ever?
Well, he just goes swimming, but does not shower. He does not use the modern bathroom in ways that other people do. And that's superstition because it is exactly what you were describing, that it would constitute your identity. If you start taking a shower every morning, it would make you a soft, bourgeois, normal German. But you are constituting strongness out of keeping your bacteria fermentating in your body longer. You have plenty.
Do you swim every day?
Yes.
Almost, but not necessary. Not. I wouldn't shower if I would not swim. I also would not shower.
He would not use soap for never uses soap. It's a complete German superstition. It's based on the fact that since they are an industrial country, they cannot use their products by themselves, but they only export it. It's the salt superstition, but in soap. You have plenty. It's all full of it.
No, it does not work. It would be great, but no, it's not that easy.
To shower?
No, I do. Even today, you see, I took a shower.
Well, but it has been weeks, and it was because I told you we are gonna see people. It's like a mother on
Ingo,
Sunday
please.
and Sunday. It's because it's my Sundiness that.
Okay, patterns. You know, I still grew up. When I grew up, you would take a bath once a week. That's what it was like. I remember.
He's still there.
Well, only
And
on holiday.
he only uses under t-shirts of the same brand all his life. Only that German brand, no other brand. And it's to be that kind of cotton, and it cannot have a special thing, and there is no exception for his rules. What he calls patterns or rules are a form of superstition, because what the fuck would it happen if the teacher would have another thing? It's only that you cannot stand it. Your body would react heavily to it. That's superstitious.
But that's
No, but
preference,
that's
no?
like and
That-
dislike.
No.
This is
No,
really
No,
something that-
because it's a preference
No, I don't. I would
without,
no.
exception.
And I don't really. It's completely fine to find out about a superstition. I think I would feel. I would really appreciate it, but that you have a
You always
heavy
have
like
a-
or dislike to certain things is not a superstition.
You always have a poor quality sticker covering the Apple of your computer.
But that's
I see.
Superstitious.
No, it's just like because everyone has the same computer, so to be able to distinguish it.
We're very regulative. It's very.
But it's not superstitious. It's not the moment. Like now, did you notice my computer doesn't have it anymore
Why?
for months and months and months.
What happened with the sticker?
Yeah, you didn't even notice. Look, check. It's not there, and It's not. But we could maybe talk about the. It's funny that so far we didn't even touch the biggest field of superstition.
Which is?
It's a horoscope.
Aha. Okay. What sign are you?
Taurus.
Taurus. Okay. And you, Sasha?
I think I'm Sagittarius.
What? And you choose?
Aquarius.
Okay. I'm Libra. It's my birthday soon. Gifts, please. No, but I mean, like, I'm not. I don't believe so much in horoscopes, but I do have a. I mean, like, I've noticed patterns, and that my two best friends are men that were born the same day, and my two biggest love relationships are men that were born the same day, which is funny.
That's funny. But that would create a superstition. The third love, you think that
Well,
needs to be.
those were bad relationships. So
Okay,
if somebody would tell me I was born in April 2nd, I would be okay. I have to get a phone call now, and I'll call you later. I don't think I would go out with someone that was born on April 2nd.
Yeah, I understand. That's also a big coincidence. But it's funny how coincidences produce the imagination of a pattern, and then you put the rest.
But you wouldn't call it a superstition.
No, I think it's self-preservation by now.
What do you think about it, Asha? Do you have any relation to horoscope?
Horoscope? Not. I think that the whole thing has been invented for very truly objective reason, because kids that were born in winter must have been exposed to completely different conditions than those in summer. So, for example, the way how environment can change.
I was born in the winter.
Right, but the moment people started to live more and more comfortable or uniform environment.
That came after me.
Yeah, that's sort of. But if the idea is that if you're born in winter, right? So normally you will be born in an environment which has less fresh fruit or vegetables, whatever
My
it is.
kids.
Yeah, and then
And cold.
cold and dark and so.
Cold,
And I'm absolutely convinced that this must have an impact.
Of
And
course,
the different
of course, this is
bacteria will be sitting in your gut, and your mother will have very different composition, not very different, somewhat different composition of her breast milk. And that will all feed into how many nutrients you get, what kind of vitamins you get, and all of this must have had an impact on how these people personality, of course, absolutely. And then and that's how statistically the horoscopes came to life, because they reflected
The seasons.
Yeah, and as well say something about the sex life of your parents, like when it's
You
most,
know?
when we're most active, are
Well,
there
it
people?
says
If
as
they're rather
Sasha
like
said, it says mostly about the temperature of your country.
temperature, right? Temperature, food, and I think temperature, food, which obviously is normal vitamins and so on and so forth.
What I found out is that my birthday is October 5th, and it's the most common birthday.
Really?
Yeah, because it's statistically, to be born on October 5th, it means that your parents had sex on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Ah.
So, and the amount of people that have sex on New Year's Eve is
Which is
high.
superstitious, because then it's the first of the year, and then you have sex the first day
So-
of the year or around the first day, thinking that a new life and a new something would
But I
come.
don't think you're
That's-
trying to make babies. I think you're drunk and you want to get laid. But that's
Germany,
But-
so in Germany, Taurus is a very common sign because why? Because this means you're a holiday child.
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
Summer holiday is very simple.
the day, October 5th, is the most
yeah.
common one because it's just like the 9 months away from the.
What do you mean
40
holiday?
weeks, actually.
When were you
Oh,
made?
summer
Vacation.
holiday, summer vacation.
And then me, like the February, what is made? What is
Think
February?
about it. Think about it.
I don't know.
You're a spring child. Like when it's like more. That's as well possible. As well when it gets warmer. So one is when it gets warmer, and the others are like on the peak of heat.
Yeah. I do think that if one were to investigate the frequency of births in different countries, historically, one would definitely figure out that there were waves where most of the people will be born.
You could tell it at school when were all these birthdays, and it started. It was really this kind of starts in February. In Germany, it was like this February, and then it peaks in May, June, and the other half less.
Yeah.
It's
And-
true.
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And then it will come into behavioral patterns.
Yeah,
Like
you're
there's
right.
not so many autumn childs.
No, it's true, and this is also how people really love to read in the pattern signs of possibility. Because at the end, the whole thing that we are talking about is the production of hope. Like people needs to feel free, and then in order to feel free, you need to feel encaged. So the superstition encages and frees you at the same time. So that's why my mother bought a black
Absolutely.
cat, because it's both. Then you are like you encage to feel free. And then you are free from the pattern that has been given to you, so that you are kind of stating that you have that possibility. It's up to you. So what we now call empowerment, which is a very bad word. But I think the like hope and the dynamics of hope and freedom, which, for example, Caroline was obsessed about when she was doing Documenta, and she started talking about hope, people looked really badly to her, because hope was a word completely out of fashion. Nobody wanted to talk about hope.
Because it was not related to reason. No?
Yeah, exactly. And then
The hope is in Germany, particularly, it's completely occupied by the church.
Yeah.
It's a
maybe,
yeah.
but it was very interesting that everyone is talking about empowerment and so on when the
And Bloch, it was like
horrible. But she did not mean that. She meant exactly the cycles when you feel that, as Sasha is saying, that distraction is so close to you that when you escape it for whatever reason, when you feel that it's not hitting you, then you feel a sense of hope, which is different than the everyday life situation of freedom or decision-making process combined. Imagine something which is a very good coincidence plus a decision-making that implements that coincidence may produce an idea of freedom which is monumental. And there is it's also something which is linked to intelligence, because some people can, as he was saying, predict that something in that direction may come and design decision-making processes that encompass that, and it's like surfing. Then you are in a big wave. You go with something which, and that's what, and that's what today economy describes as a startup. A startup is a stupid word for that combination, or trying to, again and again, combine these two processes, like an incredible good reading and interpretation of the data which are available and situate you better in the reality, adding a decision-making process that implements it, and then if you are talking in terms of economy, you get richer. If you are talking in terms of love, you get luckier. and then you are love, or things like that. And I think that superstition was also a training camp for predictability, like how predictability is, and it's happening. And my big problem now is that young people, education, everything is very much about controlling, and there is almost no dance with prediction, because everyone's talking about it, but you need to train it.
Like reading the signs?
It's
Yeah.
so
in
big.
the
It's so
entrails
big.
of birds?
No, I mean, but the horoscope is the new religion. for
Yeah, I
millennia-
know,
It
but,
is. It
but they
is.
are reading it.
Like if
reading
you're
it.
compatible with...
And it's not about times of the year, because I mean the horoscope is much more complex. When you're invested in it, it's all about this, like, it's really about the constellation of the stars.
Yeah, right, but
and
you
then
see the stars.
the Saturn is doing this and that,
But
and
this
then
is a
you have
totalitarian view.
It's not about which sign you are, but which part of the sign, and then it's good.
But this is the contrary of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you are reading it like that, you are just completely wanting to be in the hands of a bigger power. What I think is that when you don't want to be in the hands of a bigger power.
But that's like
because-
Mercury retrograde, no? That's one of the, that's a big
Sí.
one now. That,
Yeah, the Mercury thing. Yeah, that's
What is that?
gigantic.
that if because that one it's something that has to do with malfunctioning. So if people are believing it a lot now because I guess Mercury goes retrograde sometimes. Don't ask me what that
But
means.
what is
Don't ask me what that means.
Mercury, the planet,
Mercury, the planet, it goes retrograde.
What is going
I have
retrograde?
I don't know. That it just goes retrograde. Don't ask me. It just goes retrograde. It has something to do with you. I think when you look at it with a telescope or with the naked eye, it appears to be going backwards. I think I don't know. But so people say that when Mercury is retrograde, you are likely to have a computer crash or a bureaucratic problem or something go wrong with electronics.
Yeah.
So that's a very modern superstition.
I like that. It's beautiful.
So people very often tell you, yeah, I was trying to answer your email, but Mercury retrograde. It's very funny.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I like it very much.
I also like it.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
it's
beautiful.
very good metaphor. It's
Very beautiful. I did not want to. I couldn't answer your mail. Plus, I don't give a shit about the proposal. But Mercury was retrograde. And,
I have perfect excuse. Yeah.
absolutely.
Is there a short code?
For Mercury retrograde?
Yeah.
is there
I have no
emoji?
clue. I just
Does it
just
say
remember
MR or
MR.
what do you say?
that. I don't know. I don't use it, but it has been used.
But
on
what
many
about?
times.
or what
But
do you
what
say?
about an emoji that would
Yeah.
symbolize the fact that
Is the Mercury,
Mer-
does it have an emoji? Yeah.
Let's make one.
Now we need an emoji of Mercury retrograde. It's a round with an air on top, like
With an
that.
arrow, like a backward arrow or something.
Qué bonito. I like it.
That's a good one.
But why do you think that young millennials? I think also to
They're not
call
so
a
young.
generation
Millennials are not so young
millennial
anymore,
is
exactly.
No, then next.
I mean,
Middle
don't know.
Ages.
I mean, it's.
But to call generations millennials is a very. I always thought it was superstitious. It's a complete messianic.
because we are running out- we are
superstitious.
running
You are
out of
sending them to
letters.
the trash can right away. The word is bad luck. If you are millennial, bad luck, because it means that kind of.
It's a very confusing term, because what does it actually mean? It's not that you're born around 2000. You're born early on. So what actually is a millennial?
it's
coming
a bad
coming
faith.
of age around the change of millennium.
Exacto. You are 18 when the
Already
change.
18.
Or,
That
or
all?
18 or around, because generations are a chance of 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah,
not 10,
that's how
20
you
years.
measure a
Okay,
generation.
So you are around.
And you also
So you're
have,
between 10 and 30? No.
No.
you have like I mean like Generation X, which is when they have the baby boomers, then Generation X, which is like names about after this Douglas Copeland.
Also,
novel.
very bad faith. They took it from fiction, and fiction is completely soaking into superstition. And to call somebody Generation X is very bad faith.
Then-
because that means also X is the incognita, is the
Yeah, but that was
historical
the whole
idea.
point. That was why he was calling it
But it's
Generation X.
just bad luck.
Then
Yeah,
you have
no.
the
Generation
idea.
Z,
that's the next
el
one.
último mono.
Those are the ones like Greta Thunberg is Generation Z.
Z.
And you have
Wasn't
The
that
last
early
monkey.
on?
Huh?
That's
In
that's
Spanish.
that's the one past the millennials.
Yep.
It's Generation Z.
Z.
I thought that was even before the millennials.
No, that's the one.
Millennial, Generation X, Generation Z. Generation Z
There's no
is also a
Generation
bad
Y.
naming. You should not name that. Like, it's bad.
They have a zero in there. It's like, no, they have a zero, and probably that's why they're called Z. A zero, like they're 2000.
I have no idea.
Like
I'm
0,
not
1,
into
0,
that,
2, 0, 3, 0, 4.
But then you have the in-betweens, because so there is like now a sub-generation that are called the exennials, which is people that are in between the Generation X and the millennials, and sort of shared traits of both generations.
This naming is really imposing a chart, and it's bringing bad luck. It's a bad
stupid,
faith. It's very superstitious.
So-
This naming. We were belonging to any generation?
I think I'm Mexennial, actually, but the way that they are measuring it now.
Mexennial?
Exennial.
Exennial.
In between the Generation X and Millennial.
And you, Ingo?
I never thought of it.
The way they measure it, it has to do with if you are, which is stupid because it's not uniform across the planet, but it has to do with if you are a digital native or not.
But before, generations were not named. We start naming
the
them
boomers.
when we are consuming them. Like the baby boom was the first name, baby boomer.
Yeah, because it simplifies
People.
and then
In
gives
millions.
and it
Consuming
gives
trends and things.
Yeah,
and
and
then
consuming
consuming
people.
trends and then if you define millennials and they get used to this, then you can sell them products as
That
For
identity-
them.
in a very easy way
For
because it's
identity, yeah.
identical things. So
I think this is a
so
really
superstition,
manipulative. Yeah.
I'm sure people will be some of them will be very happy to hear this. Superstition, to some degrees, and superstition is a great thing because if as an individual you use superstition to diversify your own world growing up and become, to some degree, a hostage of different fears and thoughts and then you filter it away or not, and then you develop and then.
Well, but you said something yesterday against what you are saying now in a good way, meaning that people are collectively sharing. If people collectively share the same fear, it's also absolutely blocking.
Absolutely.
It's blocking a
Absolutely.
whole tranche of the population.
Absolutely. That's exactly
Because the
what-
idea is to diversify the fears.
Yeah.
Some are in fear of the black cat, which are not in fear of the salt. They are
Yeah,
not. So,
yeah.
And then now with this pattern overimposed into an already super mega short pattern of the 20 years pattern,
Yeah.
then the space to move is none.
Absolutely, but that's what I think, in a way, will at some point conclude even our conversation, that you are poetically going into time of superstitions,
Yeah, I think so too.
of mega superstition, which are forcefully introduced into society and then create
That's my point. I totally agree with you. I think that we are, even the influencers, I think everything is like enforcing the pattern reading system, which is superstition but capitalistically produced to control very sliced tranches of population.
Absolutely, because
and
that's
go for
simplified,
them.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you branding and all of this, take into account individuality is completely old-fashioned.
Yeah, because we are not controlled by traditions anymore. So something has to replace them.
Yeah, but I mean tradition that's for sure. But since we are talking about consumption and branding consumption in a way that will be appealing to us, I mean the climate change, for example, that we talk about. So this is a mega.
But also the
Superstition.
obsession with food.
Obsession
fits
with
into
food.
Do you
the
think
same.
what? But could you finish? It's a superstition?
Yeah, of course. It's a lot of things will be super, because nothing is really analyzed in a sophisticated way. There's no debate, no discussion, no number crunching, It's a lot of statements, and the statements tend to generate this at the end. One of the statements, or collectively, may win, and they generate this generational superstition, right? Then is guiding a particular slice of population in a very effective way. I mean, so.
But that's not superstition. It's just it's a certain belief that now is, that gets
The end of the world?
solidified. That was in the beginning was very vague and now gets a stronger belief. But that's not a superstition.
It's like an update on
and it's not
Nostradamus,
even
no?
matter if you think this belief is correct or not correct. It's not a superstition. It's a belief, and
But I understood
there's-
differently what he said. I understood that the climate change fear would produce superstitions in the way certain signs are read because there is not enough data to evaluate the real damage of certain things. So this damage would be reevaluated through superstitions. Like, for example, if it rains in a sunny day, it means that the next 3 months are going to be I don't know what. So this
Like
kind
a
of
farmer's almanac kind of thing.
Yeah,
I mean, but I was thinking. I mean, in psychology, it's called like death pulsion, which means this desire for death, or this compulsion that is beyond your own conscious thought, and we all have it. Which has to do with risk-taking and so on, not only toxoplasmosis, also that. And of course, people have been predicting the end of the world forever, and Nostradamus gets a revival every few years. And now I think a lot of besides wanting a front seat to the end of the world catastrophe, which I think subconsciously a lot of people want to, am I going to be the one that sees the oceans dying? Am I going to be the one that witnesses the last elephant? Besides that, there is also this element where it sort of like substitutes the Nostradamus thing or the cult of people that go on the top of the pyramid with sneakers to sacrifice themselves in some kind of like neo-Aztec.
Right, but there's always a pretext for some sort of a global dictatorship of some horrific scale that, will take all of these fears, whatever you name them, into right, but the spread of the viral impact of them is very different because it's confined to villages, confined to
I mean, just one thing to say, sorry, because it's very easy to speak about like the cultural thing and fear, but if you look at, I mean, like climate change does have an impact, and it does happen. If you look at what happens in Latin America again, like, and people that are, I mean, like climate activists do get murdered. They don't make the news. They get murdered all the time by companies.
Yeah.
Because people want to make a railroad that crosses the Mayan territory, and the indigenous people don't want that because it destroys the relationship with their ecosystem that they make their living from. And then the activists get killed. Then you see all the Central American people that have to leave because their land is not fertile anymore because it doesn't rain anymore. And of course, that's very different from they have to leave. So that's very different from the symbolic climate activism that happens in Europe. But it does happen.
I totally agree with this. But there are two different things. The question is, to what extent, if you talk about superstition applied in a very sort of cozy way of individual or family being exposed to something, it's one thing. But if you use the same phenomena to run sort of masses, that's a very different. I'm not debating this. It's not that I say that someone will use a climate change. It will be a generation. It's just the situation is now such that there is a need to generate tools to manipulate large masses of people, right? And I don't say superstition will be one of them, but but one can use sort of propensity of people to have superstition to generate something of this sort. And fear of sign of something is a.
But one could also say that conspiracy theories are a very good way to
well, I mean, I guess all of it.
People.
Fear of unknown is a beginning of everything. Right?
But what is clear is now that no single system is at work alone. So there's a combination of
Sure.
many systems that provide like this kind of pattern of fear.
Yeah. So in the end, superstition is a sort of readiness for bad and good things, right?
I think in general, I mean, there's waves of fear, and it's strange that how easy then these waves get forgotten again. So it's always like the past generations who had so much were so much better. I mean, I grew up. My generation was called back then not Generation X, but Generation No Future. That's my generation. How it was called?
Future?
No Future.
No future.
No Future, because it was like the post-punk nihilism combined with fears of a nuclear war, nuclear winter. Yeah, I mean, these were like the fears. And this is interesting, and I think not one reason why people of my generation have so difficulties to adapt to global warming is because our fear was winter. It was called nuclear winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were fearing a new ice age.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just takes a bit of time, and they have the next generation, and they fear nuclear winter.
That's so funny.
No, but that's true because I remember the movies, and in a lot of the movies, the post-apocalyptic one.
Yeah.
There is a Russian one that I love that was called Letters for a Dead Man. It's a filmmaker that's called Konstantin Lopushansky. And the movie is fantastic, and it all takes place. It's like the last children that are going to some library, because there's always libraries in post-apocalyptic movies. They find some books, like repositories of knowledge somehow, and they are trekking along this winterland. This ruins,
Yeah,
and winter.
winter,
I
exactly.
think
It's called Russia.
I still know.
It's called Russia, yes.
But
No, and as for pollution, that pollution would bring winter.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the other
pollution, a
thing.
combination of pollution and
it's still true. I just read this like, and I haven't read so much about it, but even this guy Roger Hallam from Extinction Rebellion in his manifesto, like, in his last pages of it, he writes that we have to be aware that the moment the air gets clean, the earth will heat up further. So we have a bit of a problem when there's no pollution anymore. We might have additional
Heat.
yeah, additional heat, and it's a bit of a problem. But we will sort out. Yeah, we might have an extra degree Celsius just because the air is so clean. So of course the thing is, but there's always a certain naivety, simplification in it. This is then as well the reason why after a while this fear stops. So there's not just the problem that the fear gets too strong, but as well that it cannot be sustained. That's as well the problem. It just goes in waves. You cannot sustain it.
But I've been talking about
You cannot
that
live.
also yesterday. The question is also these liminal notions. The disaster is definitely not an interpretative or an emancipatory concept. It's just a liminal one. It puts you into the void, and then after that there is a nothingness, and nobody knows what to do, even in thinking or speculative thinking about it. So it's a big problem to...
So this is why it's so good that there's like different, and I think this is the complete, what our society gets completely wrong, that it still speaks of certain mental states as an illness, like manic depression and so on. I think this is all in the complexity of the society super useful, that you have these different, some people who are super alert to a point that then can as well be ridiculed by others, but you need this. I mean, of course you need a certain, a different mind. You need a different mindset, like on a hormonal level and so on, that you are able, for instance, to sustain a certain anger about an abstract topic. Yeah? To be, I mean, that's just the interesting thing that there's.
But for me, the big problem is that the big loser of this kind of mega wave of superstition is humor.
Sure.
Yeah,
Because
of
one
course.
of that's the absolutely collateral damage that we are all these young people into the horoscope and this and that. For me, only means that the neurotic humor that would allow for chance to be interpreted and to the possibility, it's gone.
But that's-
Chancing is anyway a very old-fashioned thing. So, not whole notion of not taking chances, not being random, not being organized, and so on. This is actually a potential recipe. Well, not for disaster, but for for creating a extremely homogeneous and therefore really manipulatable and extremely sensitive in with respect to being extinguishable population.
But I
Because the
think-
diversity is the foundation for fitness, and making it so homogeneous.
But humor underwent such an incredible transformation and then move away from. I think the almost only humor that's left for a certain generation is just eschatology.
But you know,
And then it's like, that is for us has been immunologically speaking the weapon towards the illness. I think
Right.
that's the only thing that we develop to, and that's really in danger. I think all this massive amount of media, horoscopes, or whatever. So the society is dominated by this type of fear. This type of anxiety does not allow for any other humor but the cake on your face.
Yeah.
Like
but you know,
going
you
back
have-
to the cake
no,
in your
you-
face.
You do have, I mean, like the kind of humor that exists now, I find it super toxic because it's either eschatology or the kind of like alt-right humor that is, there is a lot of humor in the alt-right. It's
So
all
meaning
like the
humiliation.
humiliation and like this whole idea of kek, if you know who kek
No,
is.
what is
If
kek?
not, it's a frog, and Pepe the Frog, and kek is a god, and there is a lot of humor there that is. I don't want to spend time talking about it.
No, but I
it's
want to
there.
know, kek
But
is a
I tell
frog.
you later because this is not something that's really worth talking about.
Okay.
But what I'm thinking is that the lack of humor that you're talking about has to do with the sense of moral duty. Because when you are bound in moral duty, you are like stern and austere. But if shit hits the fan, then humor is one of the most vital tools for resistance and survival.
But it's
And I
gone.
believe in gallows humor. That's because that's how Incas and Mexicans, that's how we survive.
Yeah.
You have to be able to laugh at yourself, and you laugh at death in the face, and then you find ways to keep going. And you find solutions, and it's all about temporary solutions. You don't find the fix that's going to sort things out. But you're like, okay, if I do this, I laugh at it a little bit, and then I do this, and then I can keep going for another 3 kilometers. And then in 3 kilometers, I figure out how to move the car again.
Young people right now in the
They are
classroom,
so
for
serious.
example, don't laugh very much. And when they laugh at things that I would consider irrelevant when I was their age, like something that I would not allow myself to laugh at. So it's really interesting, the transformation. That they laugh like people 90 would laugh in a village of Spain. It's like, no, that's not how you laugh. You cannot be that. No? If a dog is running and just goes with a little bit of water against a wall, and they laugh, or things like that. It's just like, no. Or yeah, like old people, like in a naive, eschatological way. So it's not. It's a fly.
No, it's a fly, yeah.
And I think that superstitious at that kind of level that we were talking about has a great, which creates also a moral duty not to. Yeah, everyone is in a crusade, so there's no jokes. But there were jokes in the crusades, I'm sure.
I don't know if there are no jokes as well. It's
No, there
as
is
well
this kind of
different
stand-up
ways
and so on.
of how you perceive, and things are not maybe even just
It's not very
you
present in
wouldn't
the
you
social.
wouldn't you wouldn't yes, exactly, but that does not mean that the humor is gone, but that you maybe would not articulate it in public. So we have an idea with social media, for instance, that things are public, that we actually have an insight in what's going on, but it's not at all. It's social media. It's not private media, not at all. It's public. It's public, and
But do you
so
remember when
they
the
shift.
jokes, when the jokes were sent, like even now, there's people sending you jokes per WhatsApp, which are like PowerPoints.
My mom sends me those, and my dad.
And this is a serious problem.
Yeah, they're so bad.
Do you have
Exacto.
any opinion on this, Sasha?
Well, I mean, not. I'm preoccupied by very sort of simple analogy that.
But you are living in America. In America, the humor is very cooperative.
Yeah,
No?
but we need to look beyond this sort of and think, what does it mean? How to understand everything that's happening now? And for me, the easiest way to think about this is, so when we talk about superstition and other sort of attributes of human culture, it's also interesting to think whether there's a kind of general rule that governs this, and what does it mean. And I kind of like to think about the brain development.
The what?
The brain development.
Of who?
General brain development. So the way how brain develops is you start with the one cell, and then the neurons start to appear. They start divide, and then they become, at this point, they're nothing but amorphous, sort of, relatively speaking, mass of cells. Then they start to make connections, and then they start to build networks. And as networks are built, each networks need to find the right partner, and those who do survive, those which don't. And the networks are built and organized, and the massive networks are being built, and then the human is born. And at the time when the human is born, most of the connections are established, and most of the neurons sort of filter out. And then the next level of connectivity comes, which now reflect the environmental impact, and then gives the finesse of the connectivity in the brain. And then at some age, a person is kind of born as a person, in a sense that the brain is established in that sort of form. So if you take this analogy into society, we are somehow at the level of this sort of expansion and formation of very primitive networks, right? So if that were the case, it doesn't really matter. We are at a point when whoever wants to install new principles or superstitions or guiding, it's just all irrelevant, because at some point it all will be formed the way how brain is made. The networks will be established, the connections will be fixed, and everything which is unnecessary or potentially harmful will disappear, and then it will be a global brain. What we are talking about, we're talking about the powers that we believe can control this. I think they may control it, and at some point there could be an unfortunate event which will abort human race development as a global brain. But if you're lucky and this is not going to happen, then the brain of humanity as such will be formed. And what will happen then, it's different, because it will be a global brain where the role of individuals.
That's like communism.
Well, nah, it's not a communism. No.
Communist brain.
It's a different. It's every neuron has its own function, which is extremely important. You can take out a single neuron, and then may distort the function of many networks.
And do you think that the brain is developing this way?
No, that's like the larger humanity.
It's a larger humanity.
But I
And we
think
are
it's-
talking now about the efforts to abort this development, which is always this critical point when extremely strong
No, I
impact may
think
happen.
this analogy would have worked to some degree if there would be no computers and no technology.
But the computers
and there would be
help
a
it.
world government, and then you would have, but with artificial intelligence coming in, and as well machines coming in, and doing so many things that the thing is, what is the function of all these cells, these humans? I think, and this is the whole, what the big main irritation today in society is. What are we good for?
Oh, we are good for network. We are at the end, we will be all human brains will connected to each other, will generate this absolutely phenomenal, powerful network and mega brain which will transcend the value of individual existence and create something that
That speed of obsolescence, that's what you're talking about, no? Like the robots are going to take my job.
No, robots will
obsolete
not. No. They will not. Its whole thing will become what technically is inside you, Julieta or Chus. You have you're carrying the brain where individual value of individual neurons is tremendous, yet it...
So you're talking about some sort of...
I don't think so.
Some sort of a transcendent.
Transcendent, yeah. And I think that what we are talking...
This is the whole idea of the new sphere, and then, there's a big
new sphere
belief.
and cosmism.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
I know, but this
is very nostalgic.
Very cosmist also.
Nostalgic.
I personally think that, but it's the same thing. Why to argue against this if you have an example of brain development? Then you would say, oh no, brain development is...
Well, there's a part which is nostalgic, but there's a part that says, which at least let's say so, technology moves towards it, that we are moving towards synchronizing, which is also in contradiction with old traditional emancipatory movements. Because there is a big tension that we are living in between ideas or traditional ideas of emancipation and individualism and autonomy, and ideas of global synchronization, not only among humans but also among machines. So this tension is there. I think the other thing is, do we have or not the speculative philosophical tools to deal with the complexities that they are putting on the table, and also we are, as I think Sasha is saying, sometimes even acting according to our own prophecy, because since the consumer culture and so on is synchronizing people in this kind of generation and patterns and horoscopes and all that, so this goes into that direction.
Yeah,
but I have
of course,
question.
that's what...
Sorry, Ingo. Because we keep talking about like humans and machines, and superstition, and like a kind of like superstition as a connecting thing. But do we think that animals are superstitious? Or is that a privilege of the human?
No, but we talk about this. They have neurosis. Every animal you look at has a
but that's a neurosis.
No, but it's what you say. It's a predictive behavior. It's better to move 50 times along the axis in anticipation of a danger coming from the right or left, because if it comes, you're safe, than to stay still and just enjoy the sunshine.
Yes, I also think that animals are superstitious.
Yeah, I could tell it. Like this summer was feeding the cats, I could sense they were completely... Like there's one cat, I would come, bring the food and the milk, I would always first step back, like a tiny bit, and always at the same, going one step down, always on the same position. Always go in the same position, retreat, come, and it has of course to do with some kind of previous trauma, and it was completely but insisting on this, behavior was so...
animals are not spontaneous.
No, not at all.
But they're also incredible. They are really... let's say, they have an incredible knowledge about patterns that we don't possess.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely possible to think that they want to defy their own patterns, because why not? I think they are intelligent enough, some of them, to
And many of the patterns
absolutely-
must be anticipatory because, you know, if you follow the immediate signal, it could be too late. So you need to have some sort of a computational capacity to anticipate something, or you do it randomly, that's generating this diversity of anticipatory thing that. So our immune system is a very good example of anticipation. So because we make absolute insane amount of antibody that we will never use, but they are made in anticipation of the coming danger, infection,
Malaria.
anything,
And
anything. Yeah. So the whole
And
purpose of
autoimmune diseases as well as very superstitious.
well, it's unfortunate drawback of being.
I would love that. That theory is really good one.
Yeah.
Autoimmune diseases is a result of superstition.
Absolutely. Autoimmune disease is the extreme case of this diversity gone rogue because, you know, you make,
I want to protect you from yourself.
well, not really. It's just your immune system, in the effort to be super efficient, become a little bit dysregulated and then it starts to attack you. It's unfortunate sort of consequence of this. But the main thing is that we do have a lot of wastefulness embedded in us, which protects us from environmental danger. And the same behaviorally, because we generate diversity of behavioral patterns in anticipation of potential danger. And superstition is one way of formalizing it, you know. And,
Yeah, totally. I think so too.
I would like to get back to the brain analogy with the brain, and I believe as Chus that there will be completely new, smooth ways to synchronize with each other, and this is when yesterday talking about this post-freedom scenario. This is not like, oh, we will get back into an authoritarian state. This was not what I was thinking, but kind of this this idea of idea of autonomy this like enlightenment, autonomy. It's beyond that. But the question with the brain is, okay, the brain has a function within the body, and that's. So, and I doubt that this like newly synchronized and at the same time super diverse global humanity or post-humanity would have this kind of function. Or would it have this kind of function?
Well, I mean, depends what function you give. If the function is a spread of life or spread of knowledge, you can technically imagine the situation when you can beam yourself somewhere, and this is not impossible. So our understanding of spreading of life is ridiculously limited to spreading of a biological seed, which is what most of the people like. There are definitely a possibility of spreading life in this form, but there's also a possibility of spreading
Consciousness, you mean?
knowledge, whatever you like, or I don't know consciousness, but a knowledge. And knowledge can be spread by beam, and beam has potentially have no constraints that we can
to send it into outer space.
Yeah, outer space, and that's anyway
Or
something.
into the deep sea.
Deep sea. I mean, yeah, and it depends. We can't think about this. We can only. It's all become will be ridiculed because it will be all saying, you know, it's all science fiction and so on. Well, you know, but it's, you know, but there are great thinkers like Freeman Dyson, who is one of the most amazing physicists of the 20th century. He talks about spreading of life by sending microcapsules filled with some organic material, well, living species,
Tardigrades.
to infinite space, and then let them be there to populate. This is a very bacteriological way of thinking about this and contaminating space by possible.
Yeah.
That's potentially one, but it's the easiest way for us to imagine life being spread. But life can be spread also by other forms, and we still are so far off in understanding even simple things, because even when we sit here, there are spores of bacteria around us that perhaps have been here for thousands of years. And they are not life. They are not life. They are life only when they become germinated, and they will start producing bacteria and so. But but these are organic matter that have been here, will be here, beyond our beyond our times. What does it mean, and what can stimulate them to existence? I'm not talking about anything religious. I'm talking about
about conditions.
Conditions.
No, the interesting thing. Okay, getting back one last time to the brain. A well-functioning brain, of course, offers completely new possibilities, as we know, to have an effect outside of the brain. The thing is, the brain does not only work. The function is not just to help you keeping you alive, but
Influence.
You can start influence. You can start a war. You can you can detonate a nuclear bomb. You can kill yourself, and that's as well. This brain can end up with the decision of stopping itself. So there's of course this more chaotic system that we are less organized system. In a way, it could be way more solid than this.
But it's right. But Ingo, yesterday the whole thing about this that we're going through fear to fear to fear. Not you, but first we deal with this extreme anthropocentrism that put the human in the center of everything. But the same is true for on a bigger scale. There's definitely infinite number of spaces and universes, and as many, and you can't really imagine this, and one doesn't need to think about this, but obviously the synchronized brain, as you call it, or synchronized consciousness of people who inhabit our planet is one thing, because it's one of many, and we have no way to improve it, we have no way to formalize it, but it's the same thing. Behavior is, yes, I agree with Ingo, is individual can terminate, and that may happen. The accidental termination is completely possible.
But I think it's
just going on purpose. It could even be one.
No. But its purpose is always, accidental.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Going through the anthropocentrism thing, I find it quite fascinating that we tend to make an equation of life with intelligence and knowledge as we know it or as we experience it. Because I have this fantasy of this planet, like time passes, and because there are successful species beyond ours, which is very successful. Like jellyfish that I love. So I have this image of this planet being just biomass with no brains, like organism with no brains, just pure jellyfish, and that as a very successful form of life that does not self-predate, and feeds on that has a kind of structured chain of supply. No. It's kind of an image that I like. That there is that life is possible without intelligence, and that life is possible without knowledge.
But I think it is nice to be attached to intelligence, because there is something about intelligence.
But we are only a few thousand years old. Intelligence.
It's not about us. It's not about we don't know. I
say intelligence as we know it.
Intelligence of us as we know it, and on this planet as we understand it. That's true. But that's where we end. And then beyond this is only either religion, belief, superstition, But that giving us that's exactly where we're coming to discussion about generations and millennials, because we keep constantly stamping us or
timescales.
Our timescales,
yeah,
and then it's we don't see ourselves as a continuum of sorts, and that's what creates this.
I don't remember who said this, but there is a nice saying that is like man is the measure of the universe. That has to do. It's kind of like the Da Vinci, the Vitruvian man, that kind of.
Yeah, but look at that man. It has nothing to do with any real.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I just know that it's.
Yeah, but it's a feeling of. That's why Buddhism is so powerful to some degree.
I like that one,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, and
If there is a religion that I could be sympathetic to, it would be either Shinto or
yeah,
Buddhism.
but it's
Shinto.
I mean, I think that the whole the whole premise of religion and its birth was attempt to suppress fears.
By rules?
By hope, by beliefs,
Yeah.
by,
And to
by
cultivate, but also to
salvation.
cultivate
So
them.
yeah, so the
To
whole
give them-
notion,
no.
the whole
That's
notion
what-
of
but-
the whole notion of salvation is very powerful. So,
It's true, but it's also based on fear.
but but fear breeds
Because
salvation.
it's not given to everyone.
Absolutely, and it's a perpetual effort to
It's very competitive.
computation. It's very predictable in a way, right? So, how to be over this is
We can go over.
yeah.
I think we can. That's a nice way to
And-
close it off.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.